My name is Rebecca Moore, and I'm 70 years old. I'm saying that out loud because I don't have many reasons left to introduce myself, and because at this age, you don't tell the truth unless you mean to. I live alone now. The house is quieter than I ever imagined it would be, even on days when the street outside is busy. Sound doesn't travel the same way when there's no one else inside with you. It settles. It waits. I've spent most of my life feeling like I was standing in the wrong room. Like there was somewhere else I was supposed to be, something else I was meant to be doing, and I just hadn't figured out how to get there yet. That feeling followed me for decades. It never shouted. It never made a scene. It just stayed. I didn't talk about it much. I didn't have the words for it, and even if I did, I wasn't sure anyone wanted to hear them. Restlessness sounds ungrateful when your life looks fine from the outside. So I learned how to keep it folded away. Now I'm old enough that I don't need to protect anyone from my honesty. I'm not telling this because I want sympathy. I'm telling it because I finally understand what that feeling was, and because I didn't understand it in time. I wake up early these days. Morning light comes through the kitchen window and lands on the same spot on the counter it has for years. I make coffee. I sit. I think about things I didn't let myself think about when I was busy. Time feels different now. Not faster, exactly. Heavier. Every memory carries more weight because there aren't that many left to make. When people say life goes by quickly, what they really mean is that you don't notice it going until it's already gone. I look back at my younger self, and I don't see someone careless or foolish. I see someone trying very hard to do the right thing. I see someone who believed that responsibility would eventually feel like home. In my 20s, I thought restlessness was just youth. Everyone felt it, I assumed. You finished college or didn't, you found a job, you rented an apartment that smelled faintly of someone else's cooking, and you told yourself this was temporary. Everything was temporary then. I worked as an administrative assistant at a small insurance firm. Beige walls. Fluorescent lights. The kind of place where you could spend 8 hours a day and not remember a single moment of it afterward. I was good at the work. I was organized. People trusted me. I told myself that mattered. I'd sit at my desk and feel this quiet pressure in my chest, like I was late for something but couldn't remember what. At lunch, I'd walk the same 3 blocks, eat the same sandwich, watch people hurry past with purpose in their steps. I wanted that feeling. Purpose. Direction. Instead, I had a paycheck and a desk calendar. Friends would talk about plans. Trips they wanted to take. Things they might try. I listened and nodded and told myself I'd do those things later, when I had more money, more stability, more clarity. Later became a comfortable word. It didn't ask anything of me. I married in my early 30s. His name was Thomas. He was kind. dependable. The sort of man you could build a life with if building was what you wanted most. We met through a friend, went to dinners and movies, and settled into something easy. When he proposed, I said yes because it made sense. Because I loved him in the way you love someone who feels safe. Because everyone around me seemed relieved when I said yes, and that relief felt like approval. Marriage quieted the restlessness for a while. Or maybe it buried it. We bought a house. We argued about paint colors. We hosted dinners. I learned how to be a wife the way you learn a job. By paying attention and doing your best. People told me I was lucky. I believed them. Luck is easier to accept than dissatisfaction. We talked about children. We waited too long. Or maybe we waited exactly as long as we needed to in order to avoid them without admitting that's what we were doing. Fertility doesn't care about your timing. It just moves on. That was one of the first things I told myself I'd deal with later, and later never came. Work changed. I moved into a management role. More responsibility. More meetings. Less time to think. That seemed like progress. I wore nicer clothes. I earned more money. I was busy enough that the restless feeling only showed up at night, when everything else went quiet. Thomas noticed it before I did. He'd ask what was wrong. I'd say nothing. Or I'd say I was tired. Or I'd list off tasks and problems, anything concrete enough to avoid the truth. The truth was slippery. It didn't have a clear shape. It was just this sense that my life was happening slightly to the left of where I was standing. Years passed that way. Not dramatically. Not tragically. Just steadily. Holidays. Birthdays. Promotions. Funerals. Life events that marked time, whether you paid attention or not. I missed small things without realizing they were losses. A friend's art show, I said I'd catch next time. A phone call I returned too late. A weekend trip I postponed because work was busy. None of it felt important enough to disrupt my routine. The routine became my life. I don't remember the exact moment when Thomas and I stopped talking about anything that mattered. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't a betrayal. It was more like we ran out of things to say and didn't notice. We ate dinner together. We watched television. We discussed logistics. Repairs. Bills. Schedules. We functioned well. That's what made it harder to admit something was missing. I sometimes wonder if restlessness is what happens when your inner life has nowhere to go. When there's no room for curiosity or longing or change. When you keep choosing what's expected over what feels alive. In my 40s, I started feeling tired in a way sleep didn't fix. Not exhausted. just dulled. I'd look at my reflection and recognize the face but not the person behind it. There was no crisis. No breakdown. Just a quiet thinning. Thomas died when I was 56. A heart attack. Sudden. Clean, as deaths go. One day he was there, the next he wasn't. The house felt wrong without him. Too large. Too hollow. People brought casseroles. They hugged me. They told me I was strong. I nodded and accepted their words because that's what you do when there's nothing else to hold on to. Grief stripped away the routines that had been holding me together. Without him, without the marriage to organize my days, the restlessness came back sharper than before. It had space now. I retired earlier than planned. The job had been part of my identity, and without it, I wasn't sure who I was. I thought retirement would bring relief. Time. Freedom. What it brought was silence. Days stretched. I filled them with errands, volunteering, and small projects. I tried hobbies. Gardening. Painting. Yoga. None of it stuck. The feeling followed me into every new activity like a shadow I couldn't step out of. I started thinking more about the past. Not in a nostalgic way. More like reviewing evidence. Trying to understand how I ended up here, feeling this way. It wasn't that I'd made bad choices. It was that I'd made careful ones. Reasonable ones. Choices that prioritized stability, approval, and predictability. Choices that kept me safe and slowly, quietly, unhappy. The turning point came after my sister died. She was younger than me. Lived differently. Took risks I never would have. She moved cities on a whim. Loved loudly. Failed publicly. She was restless, too, but she followed it instead of resisting it. Cleaning out her apartment, I found journals. Notes about dreams she chased and lost. Things she regretted. Things she didn't. Her life hadn't been easier than mine. It had been messy, but it had been hers. I sat on her floor surrounded by her things and felt something crack open. Not dramatically. Just enough to let light in. I realized then that my restlessness wasn't a flaw or a phase. It was information. It was my life trying to tell me something was wrong. And I'd spent decades telling it to be quiet. I understood, finally, that restlessness isn't about wanting more. It's about wanting something different. Something truer. And I had mistaken endurance for virtue. There are things that can't be fixed now. I won't have children. I won't build a second life from scratch. I won't know what it feels like to take certain chances while the stakes are low. I can't go back and choose differently. I can only see clearly now what I couldn't see then. That knowledge is heavy. It sits with me in the evenings when the house creaks and settles. When memories come uninvited. When I think about how much time I spent waiting to feel ready. If you're listening to this and you're younger than I am, I won't tell you what to do. I don't believe in instructions handed down like wisdom. But I will tell you what I wish I'd known. I wish I'd known that restlessness doesn't mean you're ungrateful. It means you're paying attention. I wish I'd known that there isn't always more time, and that later is not a promise. I wish I'd understood that a life can look good and still feel wrong. That success can be a comfortable trap. That being dependable can slowly erase parts of you if you're not careful. You don't have to blow up your life to listen to yourself. But you do have to listen. And that's harder than it sounds. I'm not unhappy now. Not exactly. There's peace in acceptance. In knowing the shape of your life, even if it isn't what you once imagined. I take walks. I read. I sit with my memories and let them be what they are. Time is short. I feel that. Not in a frightening way. Just in a factual one. Each day is something to be noticed, not filled. If this meant something to you, if it stirred something you've been ignoring, I hope you treat that feeling gently. It's not your enemy. As for me, I'm still here. Still breathing. Still learning, even now. And that restless feeling, the one that followed me all my life, finally makes sense. I just wish I'd listened sooner.